My name is Klein. We talk about the plugin we wrote for Plone to connect to LDAP and why we did it. First, LDAP itself is the lightweight directory access protocol. So it's a protocol, for those who don't know, it's a protocol to query data in a database, in directory data, but it's not a database itself, so several implementations. It's very old. It goes back to the 80s for the base protocol, and then LDAP itself was developed around 1993. So it was developed. If you work with it, you might find things in there, in the schemas that are really from the 80s for telephone directory services. But it's used today. It is, in fact, broadly used in several organizations, and it is perfect for user management, also at a large scale, so several thousand, 100,000 users. There are major free software solutions around, like OpenLDAP, 389 directory server, the Apache directory server, maybe more. Commercial solutions, also most known, Microsoft Active Directory. And it's all also documented. It has, there are some schemas around, industry standard schemas, and you can write your own schemas. So now the problem was that we had LDAP support in Plone, but there was a reason we wrote it in a different way. First, in 2001, we had products LDAP user folder, which worked fine with the old SOAP. It was just a replacement for the normal user folder, and then it LDAP users. It's kind of major code, but it's difficult to extend, and I think it is very limited group management. And then came the pluggable authentication service, and on this level, we needed something else to plug into the pluggable authentication service. So this LDAP multi-plugins was created, and in fact, it's a plugin that contains an LDAP user folder and wraps it to the API of pluggable authentication service, and it's difficult to install and has only limited group features again. Then in Plone, you want to have better support, also group management support. And then Plone LDAP was created, which then again derived from LDAP multi-plugins, used the old LDAP user folder, had better group management, was difficult to install again, and but you can really integrate LDAP fully in your Plone site. And on top of this, then somebody created a user interface to Plone LDAP that was called Plone LDAP, where you can more easily install this whole stack. And this was, if you had different requirements than this stack of software provided to you, then it was very difficult to change the behavior of it all. It was difficult to understand. Nobody wanted to touch it, in fact, and it's also nearly impossible to extend it in the same way. It was just stacked on top of another. So now, what we did was a different approach, also because we needed LDAP support in Pyramid or in Repos BFG in this time, and we needed it for different projects. We needed groups from LDAP flexible, so we did a complete rewrite. We created something from scratch using Python LDAP just this time, and it was this groups from LDAP thing and BDA LDAP as a base, as a convenience library, but we discontinued both. Out of this experience, we developed path plugins LDAP, where users and groups are from LDAP, where we have an abstraction of the LDAP structure. So we have a module called User and Group Management, UGM. And with this UGM module, you can define what is your users layer, what is your groups layer. And that is not Plone dependent, it is just pure Python, and you can use it everywhere. We support different group models. So in LDAP world, there are different ways to deal with groups, and Yeah, and this is supported at the moment. You can extend it if you need more group support, if there's something that you not cover. What it does is it maps the LDAP attributes and this path plugin to the property sheets of Plone. This is you have some round trips in there because of the architecture of the plugin of an authentication service, but it works quite well. It supports account exploration. It caches the LDAP. There's a cache inside, so you don't need to query the same query so many times. There's support for many users. What many means, several 10,000 or something like that. And it's also has good test coverage from 98% or something like that. At the moment, there are some limitations. We can't add users and groups in past plugins LDAP. You can modify the attributes of a user, but not add or delete users. So it's just not implemented in past plugins LDAP. The underlying library, Node-X LDAP, implements this. And we do not support this fallback LDAP service. It's more or less a configuration issue. Should be simple to add. And limitations also brings this old Plone portrait problem up, and you always need to patch this if you want to have portraits not in the ZODB. That's the thing that needs to be fixed in Plone at some point. And so if you have other past plugins with portrait patches, this may conflict. The library beyond this Node-X LDAP, it's a workhorse. Past plugins LDAP is just using its API. It's an LDAP convenience library, and it's called Node because it's a tree of nodes. This Node-X namespace also contains different implementations. There's something in Node-X ZODB, Node-X whatever file system, and we have different implementations that you have an unified access on nodes with attributes. Node-X LDAP is the implementation for LDAP here. It's based on Python LDAP. It's all Python 2.7, unfortunately, not 3, but that could be updated. Node-X LDAP has no Plone dependencies, but uses ZOP interface and ZOP components, so it's component architecture. And the module itself just defines an interface how it should be configured, but does not provide any configuration or any. So you need to implement this to use the library. In past plugins, LDAP implements the configuration using the registry, but if you, for instance, with Pyramid, you can just provide it in the Pyramid configuration and write an adapter that gives you that. And finally, we have now a test layer against running Open LDAP. So it really starts in Open LDAP. You can provide different LDIFs in this test layer using Plone testing, and test with data against an Open LDAP server. This is we didn't mock all the stuff because I think mocking is good at some points, but if you want to really look how it behaves against an LDAP server, that would be very, very complex to mock, and the possibility to make to have bugs in your mock are very high. So that's at that point it's good to have an LDAP server really running. And it's quite fast. It starts up the LDAP servers and loads an LDIF. Then you're in this layer, then you can work on it, and tearing it down again and up with different LDIF and so on. It works. It's used by us as Blue Linux Alliance. It's open for everybody to use. And we use it also in a lot of Pyramid projects. And we have also a user and group management tool that is capable of really managing many users. It's in Pyramid written, and it's called Cone UGM. It's also public available. It's a bit, I think we didn't update it from the last to the latest Pyramid version. It runs on some old Pyramid version at the moment. So maybe some work needs to be done there. And that's also, you can create groups, delete groups, and you can also have multiple user bases and define all this multi-tenant stuff. Even this module dates back to 2007, so it's a while around, and tested in several projects also in real life. The next interesting module in the stack is this Node-X UGM that is just more or less a set of interfaces defining how we want to do user and group management based on this node paradigm that you have a node with attributes. So you have a node users, and the node users contains a user, and the user has attributes. So that's very simple. And it's all mapped to this. And finally, we have pass plugins LDAP, which is in fact this pure pass plugin, as I said, and has configuration, generic setup, and a ZMI control panel, has some Plone control panel. It works with really many users and groups now and after the latest changes. And we tested this with different LDAP servers, but that doesn't mean that it does not work with other servers. But we at Plone only use this for, and I know that is working, yeah, with more. And it's also 10 contributors, and also dates back to 2007, so it's also an older one. Then, to mention this, there was a fundraising campaign to make pass plugins that really support many users. The problem was always that if you access one user or log in with one user, it wasn't a problem, but the listing of the users did not use the LDAP paging. And so LDAP server pages 1,000 users, and then it's done. And the goal was to refactor parts of the stack, mainly Node-X LDAP, but also pass plugins LDAP to support this paging. And it was not a big donation, but it was enough to do this refactoring. It was $2,000, and that's other companies. I have to say thank you. They made it possible, and we developed it at Plone, and now we released it. And I think last week ASCO tried it and found a bug. Okay, we fixed it, and now it's working. And even there's some performance tuning possible. And finally, this stack is also supported. Plone LDAP was a bit, not really orphaned, but yeah, it was not the main part of Plone that was good supported. It was not in core. It's also not in core, but yeah. That was a quick overview, and I hope we have some time for questions. Yeah. If there are any.
I thought I read when you were going through this.
Take the microphone.
I thought what I saw when you were going through the slides that you can't create users in it now, or how did that?
No, yeah. You can't create users through Plone at the moment. That's the problem. But our use case is almost there are already users in different directories, and we have our customers were ever said never touch the users, maybe just the attributes, but nothing more, right?